Welcome to Sports Buds Hockey Podcast, where two friends come together to discuss all things hockey and where everyone's opinion is appreciated. Please welcome your hosts, Merrick Zemp and Collin Simpson.
Hello and welcome to Sports Buds Hockey Podcast. My name is Merrick Zemp, and with me, as always, is Collin Simpson. How you doing tonight, Simps?
Doing great, Mav. How about yourself?
Absolutely fantastic. Another win for the Oilers. But tonight we're going to talk about all the teams, everybody in the Western Conference. Tonight's a good chance for us to catch up and see really where's everybody sitting at this point in the season. We're getting close. There can always be changes. Teams can go on a run, all that kind of thing. We did the Eastern Conference, and now it's time for the West. So we'll have a look. We'll see where people are sitting now, who's going to make it, and maybe make a few predictions along the way. Sims, why don't we start tonight with the Central Division? It's nice to see for them that we've actually got a Canadian team on top. So what do you think? What do you think of this division, and where's everybody sitting right now?
Yeah, the Central for me is always feels like it's up for grabs. There's never really specific teams that are always on top. Usually we are expecting to see, obviously, Colorado usually near the top in the last 4 or 5 years. But Winnipeg, I feel like, goes on these runs, every second year, every third year, where they just start dominating, and then you think they're done and old and they can't play anymore, and then they come back again like this year and maybe having their best year ever. And they really haven't added a lot to anything. It is once again the Connor Hellebuyck show. He's proving that he is probably the best goaltender in the world right now, and maybe has been for years, because I believe most times that they are finishing near the top of the standings, he's a major part of it. So, some other players I think are having career years, like Scheifele, and yet another guy I thought was maybe towards the end of his career, maybe not producing like he used to, but, they seem to be rejuvenated this year.
They are, but I would debate a little bit with you about, obviously Hellebuyck's done amazing and everything, but this is the highest scoring team in the NHL right now. So, it's great to have a guy that is shutting the door a lot for you and doing that. But having run support for him obviously is a big thing as well. They've got 198 goals right now, which is a good lead over anybody else in the NHL. So being able to deliver that kind of run support for the guy definitely helps him have a better record and maybe makes things a little easier back there if you're already up by a couple before you know it every game. So the next one up is Dallas, and when you talk about that team that kind of just gets older every year, and where are they going and what are they doing? Dallas always fits that mold for me. Every year I kind of think that maybe this is the year they're going to tail off a little bit. Maybe this is the year they're going to, they're a wild card team now, or maybe even start missing the playoffs or something like that, and they just keep rolling along and keep doing great.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're finally starting to get some younger pieces in that are kind of keeping the longevity of this team going and the consistency of the team going. As you talked about, like Benner and Sagan and them guys are not exactly spring chickens anymore.
I think Sagan's out for the year at this point.
Yeah, but like there's just a team of still guys who I thought were kind of right near the end of their careers. But they've been out without any like superstars. Like I guess Robertson would be considered a high end player. I wouldn't still consider him a superstar, but he's definitely a high end player. But beyond that, there's not any real big names. But guys like Rupe Hintz and some of these other players who've actually turned into pretty good players.
Johnston, even Stankoven, a good Canadian kid there. Loved watching him play for Canada a few years ago at the World Juniors. He's really come out of nowhere and is doing a good job as well.
Yeah, and then at the back end, we talked about for the Four Nations Cup coming up that we'll speak more about in a future episode. We've talked about how strong the American goaltending is. And, the first two teams we're talking about tonight in 1 and 2 for the Central Division are backed by Hellebuyck, as we spoke about, and Ottinger. So, these two teams are tied for, I believe, the lowest goals against in the entire West. So clearly they are getting that ability to keep the puck out of the net as well. And they're able to put in enough goals to, get a good plus 39. And that's turned into a really good season to start here, the 34-18.
And it's the hard part with this division, right, is that you end up with that tough matchup in the first round where most of the time it's basically a coin toss. Sitting right now, we talked about Winnipeg in first. Dallas is behind them, a good ways behind them. So, Winnipeg's got a pretty good lead at this point. But right behind Dallas is Minnesota. They started great, had a really good start to the season. We're way out in front, kind of running it with Winnipeg there for a long time, and then they've tailed off a little bit at this point. Kaprizov has been out, so that's obviously hurts their goals for a little bit, and having a star like that that's not playing is definitely difficult. But they're still moseying along. They're still getting some points, doing well, and they're still hanging in there. Kaprizov comes back, and that's a tough out for anybody in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I think with Minnesota, even though they're only a few points behind technically than the Stars, I think there's actually a bigger discrepancy between that I would consider 3 points, which to me goes to show how much Minnesota scores the right goals at the right time. Meaning the fact that, they're 3 points behind in the standings, but have a even plus minus in goal differential, whereas the team 3 points ahead of them have a plus 39. So that means that Dallas is running the games up a little more, whereas Minnesota is winning probably much more closer games. They're winning games by one here and there, or getting the opportunity goal to just squeak a win through, but they're winning the games because they're getting the points, whereas Dallas seems to be more in control of their games, obviously. So maybe a little bit discrepancy between the two.
I feel like Minnesota, I know like Edmonton went into Minnesota and really thumped them pretty good at one point, like 7-1, 7-2, something like that. I feel like that's happened a couple times to Minnesota this year. I think Colorado went in there and won 6-7-8, 8-2, something like that as well. So it could be that they've gotten, had a couple really bad nights that really skew that goals against as well.
But if that's the case, then you're looking at a team with really poor consistency.
Yeah.
Right? Because in order to come back to zero, if you're getting thumps, means you're thumping someone else.
Yeah.
Right? To get back to that zero. So if we're saying it's not a lot of 1-goal games and it's a lot of just big, reverse blowouts, that's not the type of team I want to go into the playoffs with. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. So there's the Central Division. There's the leaders. We'll get to the wild card teams later. Now, why don't you start? Because, who's on top of the Pacific? I know you're a fan. I know you're excited. You go ahead and talk about it first. I'll just let you start. Go ahead.
Well, this division's clear runner up is Vegas Golden Knights. So we'll start there with them. Actually, just joking, obviously. We'll talk about the Oilers. They are ahead. They were sitting about even, I think, the last time we looked at them with Golden Knights. So they've kind of gone at a bit more of a better stretch than Vegas the last little while. Any of the inconsistencies seem to have gone by. Like you'd mentioned, they won tonight, a couple overtime wins, I believe, in a row. But always making sure they get the win, whether it's a blowout or not. It's making sure at this time of year you're getting some points out of it. Doesn't have to always be pretty. And because of that, they are now sitting at the top at 72 points and have been on a pretty good little run lately.
They have. And you know what? They have it's consistently getting points, which is good, but there's definitely been some cracks in the armor as well. Over the last 15 games, they've won the majority, but they haven't led for a lot of it. There's been a lot of times where they've been tied. There's even been a lot of times where they were behind. They beat Seattle, they were behind. They beat Buffalo, they tied it late. There's been a few games like that where you thought they should have maybe had a better effort. They went down to Toronto the other night and couldn't make it up, right? Couldn't get it tied up again and go from there. But they were down 3-0 in the first, and they just seem to have some lapses. So it is about trying to find that 60 minutes a night and making sure, or 65, I guess, depending. But yeah, they've really, when you think about where they started, same as last year, rough start. They're near the bottom. Everybody that maybe doesn't like the Oilers quite as much is cheering and loving the fact that they're there and they're getting killed every night. But they had to figure out some things and try to do better. And I think that they've put together a really good stretch here, and now they're on top of the division. So it's hard to believe, but it was the late 80s the last time they won the division. So fingers crossed they can keep this going and go from there and maybe get a division crown.
Yeah, obviously they've been really close the last few years. It's not like they haven't been sitting on the cusp. Vegas has just been that team that's just seemed to be a little more consistent. They have always had a little more depth.
Last year out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. And then sometimes a team just squeaks by, but it's always been really close. I think other than Vancouver's a one-off year last year, it's been a lot of Vegas, LA, and Edmonton, and they've kind of been pretty close to interchangeable, all three, where you could be like 3-4 game swings and it, switch places. You could have got a division in the last 2 or 3 years for sure. Is there any like injuries or anything like that you think might affect the rest of the stretch?
Not for the Oilers, not right now. They just brought in Klingberg, and so we'll see if that develops into anything. See if it makes sense for him to be a part of the team full time and be a top four guy. He's got a possibility there. Other than that, I think they're in pretty good shape, and I really think that this is a pretty solid team. You do see more depth scoring. You're seeing all kinds of guys put the puck in the net. Arvidsson and Skinner are starting to do better. A little bit of all that, right? There's a feeling process to a team, and they changed a lot of stuff over the summer. Changed a lot of moving parts. So getting them all to gel and I don't know how Knobloch does it, but he puts a new and different line combination seemingly almost every night. So how he's managing to do that and they're finding success in different pairings and different groups, different threes, and it's been really good for the team. And I think they're pretty adept at playing with everyone else. So it's I think they're doing well and they're gearing towards playoffs. And actually, when you talk about it, I never even thought about it when you're talking about injuries. We're still looking at Kane coming back at some point. So if you've got some lines already set, and you can add a guy like Kane to, instead of him having to come in and be a first line guy, he can come in and join your third line and be some depth scoring and really just a big body that's going to hit everybody on the third line. That's a huge piece to add later on.
And I think with that, when you were talking about Knobloch mixing up the lines quite a bit, I think that helps the playoff runs because, guys get injured, have a knock, maybe they're just not playing well. You need to be able to switch it up. And if you're not used to that, you've just played the same lines the whole way through the season and have to make some changes. It's really hard. You don't have enough time to adapt to the new lines. And then, as you spoke about, it also applies to even a guy like Kane coming back, right? Because you have to bring him back. And sometimes you bring back a player, you disrupt your good play because you've just gotten your lines perfect. They know exactly what's going on. If you bring a guy in, you're like, well, he's talented. But did he help or hinder the team if you're already rolling?
Nobody knows what to do with him at this point.
Correct. But if you're able to mix lines, it's a lot easier to bring them back into the mix and not disrupt the flow. So we'll see how that turns out.
Definitely. We'll see it through 16 playoff wins and 4 wonderful rounds.
15 wins and another cry party.
Anyway, so next up we've got Vegas Golden Knights. Good team. They've been through a really rough stretch right now. 3 wins in their last 10, something like that. So that's obviously opened the door for Edmonton with a decent run to get by them. And even you've got LA is a few points back, but they've got some games in hand and stuff for their, I think due to the fires, they had some games canceled or postponed. So they're a little bit back as well. You could really see that gap could close up, and that might, it'd be great to see that as a first round matchup.
Yeah, Vegas as usual near the top of the standings. But definitely one thing I was kind of looking at their stats and, talking about LA being, they're a fair points behind, 8 points behind. But with that 4 games, obviously you win all 4 and we're talking about even Steven. But the importance we always put on like home games and stuff like that is obviously important. But then you look at this team's record of all teams I've been kind of looking at, their road record versus their home record is completely opposite. On the road, they're barely 500 hockey team, but yet they're 19-6 on the road. I mean, at home, sorry. So it just goes to show how important it is for them to make sure they hang on. Like even if you don't get to the top, even if you don't beat the Oilers, you want to hang on to that because,
that number 2 slot.
Yeah, like otherwise you're playing LA on the road and, maybe all for nothing. Those games could really matter to get that home ice advantage.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about that, LA, looking at their record, 15-3 at home. So again, they want to be there. They want to catch Vegas. They want to be in second place and make sure that they've got those extra home games. They've lost on that the last couple of years with their battles with Edmonton. They haven't had home ice since the first one. And so, it's a big deal to try to have it and try to get there.
So, it'd be interesting to see, but definitely I don't see them falling off anywhere too much. We'll see if LA could catch them, but they're sitting pretty good, and they're still within striking distance of Edmonton as well. So we'll see how they finish up.
Yeah, and I think Edmonton has one more game. I think Vegas maybe has two more games before the break. So I think at this point, Edmonton is guaranteed to be in first place going into the Four Nations break. So that's a pretty good stat, especially considering where they started and what people would have thought about it. LA, the same thing that I always think. I don't ever expect them to be there. They don't seem to make a lot of changes. They don't seem to improve a lot, but there they are. Another good season. They're doing well, and they just keep chugging along. So, I mean, good on them. Why don't we touch base a little bit on the wild cards? Now, it's a little bit different than the East. Over in the East, you had 8 teams that were within about 4 points. On the West side, you've got, once you take about 6 points back, you're already kind of drifting a little far for somebody that's really going to make an impact. But your first wild card team is the Colorado Avalanche. So for them, they're not too far back in Minnesota. That's definitely catchable to try to still get third in the Central or even, push. But they are 15 points back of Winnipeg. So the idea of going for the division crown is still, pretty unlikely at this point. You'd think that gap's not something that's going to be closed, but they do seem somewhat secure in their spot. What do you think of Colorado right now?
Yeah, obviously, I think we'd all expect them to be a lot higher up by this time of the season, whether they have a good start or not. Obviously, they made that big change with the Rantanen deal. We'll see a bit later on how much that plays out by losing that guy and bringing back Nick Cash and stuff like that, if that's going to be the difference. I think they're still going to add some players, I think, at the trade deadline. So I think that's going to help them as they go forward. They are sitting in a pretty good spot, in my opinion. 5 points ahead of the Flames for that to hold on to that wild card spot. A couple games at hand, but still, that's pretty far up on both Vancouver and Calgary. And they're only a few points, 2 points behind Minnesota, and I'm pretty sure Kaprizov's still out for a while. So, I think they still are in good striking distance to move into third, into that type of group. And I don't think they're close enough to both Calgary and Vancouver that both of them could leapfrog them. Like one maybe goes on a run, but I don't see both. So I feel like they're sitting pretty good in that spot.
Yeah, and I think really you look at a team like Colorado, they have some experience. They've been there before. Not everybody, obviously, they've changed personnel, but as a team, they're somewhat comfortable. So as long as they make the dance, they know that they're good to go. They know that they're going to play everybody. There's 8 teams on your side. You're going to play whoever you play to get through to get to the finals. So I don't think they're too worried about it as long as they get there. But I also think with trading Rantanen, they're not the team they were. Nick Cash is fine. He's a good player and he's made some good plays so far and everything else. But there's a reason they got 4 players back and traded 1 away. I mean, it's this deal is a tough one. It shows a different landscape and it shows that they're going to make choices. So it's really interesting to see where that's going to go. And I think it's also a bit of a kick to your team when not everybody knew it was coming or anybody knew it was coming. And, best friends with not your captain, I guess, but your top player in McKinnon, those are tough decisions to start making those kind of moves. And sometimes it hurts the morale even more. Like you said, I don't think they're falling out of the playoffs. They're still a good squad, but I don't know that their drive is there. I don't know without Rantanen as well. I don't know that they're gonna hit it hard and push in the playoffs and really be a team that's. I think they may end up being a wild card team that loses in the first round, and that may be just where they are now without Rantanen and in that spot.
Well, I think sometimes we kind of overrate them because it's only been 2 years out since their cup, and they were so strong. Like I felt like they were just above and beyond most of the teams in the West. So each year I keep coming into these seasons thinking, okay, Colorado's going to be sitting near the top of their division. And every year we continue to talk like this, like they're just barely squeaking into playoffs. Like halftime of the year, we're looking at them going, okay, they're just having a bad run, but they're just too good not to get better. But then they don't really get that much better. They get like 600 hockey better, not 750. And then I have to rethink to myself, this isn't the same team. Landeskog doesn't play anymore. Rantanen out. cadre from that team out. There's been a lot more changes than I sometimes think about because some of the stars are there. We're always thinking about the fact that, McCarr's still there, McKinnon's still there. So you still think to yourself, oh, Colorado still got a great team. And they still have a good team, but I don't think they're at that upper echelon that they were a couple of years ago. So maybe it's not as unfitting to be where they are, as opposed to most years I think to myself, well, how are they behind Minnesota or Dallas or even Winnipeg, for a matter of fact, when you think about Colorado 2 years ago?
Yeah.
But maybe they're just not the same team.
Yeah. No, I think that's I think they're going to be I think they may end up getting past Minnesota, especially with Kaprizov out, but I think they're first round material this year, and that's it. So we continue on, and then the team we're all hoping for to squeak into the playoffs, the Vancouver Canucks. So hopefully they can win a couple more games, and I mean it's almost like they're daring each other to lose more between the Flames and the Canucks. So both at 59 points. The Flames are currently in just based on Canucks have a couple less wins. But, what do you think of the Flames? Where are we actually looking here? I see a minus 14 goal differential. I see a 26-20 record. Like, it's not bad. They're doing okay. But, what do you see as a future for this club right now? Are they going to make the playoffs? I mean, I know we've talked about it before, but should they even make the playoffs?
Well, the way it stands right now, I feel like Calgary has the better chance to make the playoffs. And I only say this because, one, they've got a hotter goaltender, and two, they have less expectations, right? So Vancouver has all the expectations. They finished so well last year. They were talking about probably being a cup contender this year based on last year. They seemed like they had all the pieces. And then obviously this JT and Pedersen debacle that's been plaguing the entire season. Now they've moved JT out. Didn't get much back for him. Pretty bad trade. But again, is it a bad trade when everyone in the world knows you must move one of these guys in the next couple of days? You're not going to get a lot of return. Now it comes
to one team.
And now it comes down to Pedersen's give a fuck, right? Like, we don't know. We know he's talented, but he mopes around, and every interview and the way he plays so many games, he doesn't look like he cares to be in the NHL at all. So now we'll find out once and for all, was it due to this personal issue, or is his just care meters just not high enough? And if it's not, and then you have all this pressure, I don't care how good Quinn Hughes is and some of these other guys, I think they have a harder battle to get in than Calgary, and not due to the fact that they're a worse team. There's just more stuff going on, whereas Calgary just gets to play hockey that no one expected to be in there. There's no pressure to be in, and you got good goaltending. So, you just have to play better than one team, and then you're in the playoffs, right? So,
well, and the thing is, right now, when you look at the standings, right, you've got the Canucks and Flames are both sitting at 59, and it's okay. Well, that's the battle. That's going to be the battle for 8th because you got Colorado ahead of them by 5, but LA is at 60. I mean, there's a very real chance that LA loses 4 in a row and the Canucks and Flames win a couple, and LA's sitting on the outside. And you could end up with the Flames and the Canucks in the playoffs. So, there's a lot of chances. Like we said, LA's got a couple games at hand right now because of the Fires. But, yeah, if they don't win those, it doesn't matter how many they got sitting there. It's in the end, you're going to play the same number of games by the end of the year. So, you look at that and you think, LA could still drop out. Like, I never expect them to be there, but they always are. So you kind of just take for granted that they'll still stay in that 3 spot. But it could easily be Flames, Canucks, Kings are on the outside. You could see Minnesota dropping off. You could see them there's a lot of different variations here that are really, I think, are quite possible. I feel like the Kings will just kind of keep playing along and they'll get there. And then you're going to have that battle with the Flames and Canucks. But, other than that, looking past those teams, the next few clubs are already 6 and 7 points behind. You've got Utah, you've got St. Louis, you've got Anaheim. I think it's good that Anaheim is up there battling right around 500. It's nice to see them maybe finally starting to get a little better, get some of these young players and are turning into something. St. Louis is just kind of middle of the pack and where they've been for a long time. And then Utah is a little bit better than they've been, or they were in Phoenix, I guess. Just a quick moment. to talk about Utah Hockey Club. I am not 100% not a fan of the name Utah Hockey Club. I think it's terrible. I like the fact that people actually put an effort and pick a name as opposed to just where they're from, hockey club. I know soccer does it. I know that's what, or football, you want to call it, whatever. But I'm absolutely not a fan of it. I was really happy to see that they put some names out. I don't know if you saw those, Simps. We'll just take a minute right now and talk about it.
No, I knew they were talking about the Yeti.
Yeah, the Yeti they can't do.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah,
that.
Yeti is too big a brand on their own without any help from the Utah Hockey Club. And so there's Utah Hockey Club, Utah Mammoths, and the Utah Outlaws. And they had some symbols there. The other one that was there, the Outlaws wasn't a part of it originally. It was the Utah Wasatch, which I don't know if that's a mountain near there or whatever, but I thought that was a horrendous choice. So I'm glad that one's gone. The Outlaws is kind of your standard Outlaws with the a bandana over the face and a cowboy hat kind of thing.
Isn't there already an Outlaws hockey team, like
I'm sure there
or
is
something like that?
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Or
It's a pretty
AHL?
standard Outlaws kind of thing. The
Yeah.
Mammoth and the Utah Hockey Club logo is actually cooler, but I sure hope they don't go Utah Hockey Club. So we'll see what ends up happening. They're voting over these couple weeks. I think we'll hear maybe later on, or we might not even hear it for a while. They talked about maybe just unveiling it at the draft or something like that. So we'll see. But
yeah, see, and here's the thing: when you talk about like even the football teams, right, soccer teams, even them, they actually have names. So like even when they're called FC, a lot of people like, so let's say take Man United or Arsenal, you'll see like FC all the time attached to them. But they are like the Gunners or the Red Devils or the Reds, but then it's FC.
yeah.
So it have absolutely nothing but just HC or hockey club.
Well, what's Toronto? Toronto FC.
Yeah, they might just be football. Well, no, they actually have something as well. I got to think of what it is now. But everybody seems to have still like a nickname rather than just FC. The FC is just to designate
just for standings and whatever else. Like, and I could be fine with that. But yeah, just the idea that they're just going to be Utah Hockey Club, it drives me crazy. It just seems so.
Have they given a date like when they got to pick this by?
I don't think they have a date, but it sounded like they're voting over the next few home games here, and then after that they would let people know.
So it's just a vote to the fans.
Yeah. They vote on the logo and they vote on the name, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway,
either way, they're the Utah Hockey Club that won't be in the playoffs.
That's right. So none of them are going to make it. So we're really down to 9 teams in the West. I just wanted to rant about Utah because it just drives me crazy. And so you've got 9 clubs basically battling for 8 spots. I agree. I think the Canucks are going to be on the outside when this all finishes up. I think JT Miller, whatever this whole thing is with JT Miller and Pettersson, when you look at those two, Miller is a playoff guy. Miller is a leader. Miller is a guy that stands up, and right or wrong, because when you talk about Pettersson not really caring and not really doing much, the other side of that is caring too much and screaming at your teammates and doing that kind of thing. And I think Miller kind of at least has that reputation. You've seen it on the ice a few times where he's yelling at the goalie, he's yelling at whatever. We've all played with those guys too that care a little too much and don't quite understand that not every teammate's going to want to be screamed at every time he makes a mistake, because we all do. And so, you've got both of those sides, but the heart and soul guys that really do move the needle are the guys usually that care the most, and the ones that will drop in front of a puck no matter what time of year it is, no matter what they're going to do. They're there for the win. And if you don't have those guys, then it's pretty tough to win the crunch games. And right now they're tied with 59 points. These are crunch games. All of these are going to matter. Battling hard that one extra time, even if you lose in overtime, to get that extra point, to get it to overtime, that point matters, because that 1 point right now would put one of those two teams ahead. Right? So, having that determination and having that goal to push forward like that, I don't know if they're going to have that. So to me, the Canucks definitely drop off as well.
Yeah, I think, obviously, I think JT is better for playoff hockey. I think if you say the two, but I think they made the right move I think that Pettersson can get a bigger return. So if you're going to move him, because there's still talk that they may move him if they don't make the playoffs, there's talk that he's going to get shipped out in the summer.
Yeah.
Right? And they're just going to wash their hands of it. But I think it's easier to get a better, proper return when you have an entire summer to look for the proper trade versus everybody knowing that you need to make a move now, even for this playoff run. So the lesser of the two assets to me was JT just because of his age and only because of his age. If you were to say you're both the same age, then you're taking JT Miller all day long. But in this scenario, they made the right move. Now, is it going to be the right move to get them into the playoffs? Is it the right move to get them through the playoffs, losing one of their best competitors? Time will tell. So let's go back. And we've talked about where everybody is and a little bit on how we see a little bit of the wild cards playing out. But let's just do a full predictions, top to bottom, where we think everybody's going to land.
All right. Why don't you do the Central? I'll do the Pacific. We'll go from there. So you start off. You go first for the Central.
Well, obviously, I think Winnipeg is just too far ahead. 10 points ahead of the next team. Yes, there's a couple games at hand. They do not look like they're falling off. They won 7 in a row. Even for them, the way they're playing, if they fell off, means they are going to go, 6-4, or 7-3 in 10 games. Like you can't catch up to a team 10 points ahead who's playing that type of hockey. Yeah. So they're going to take number one. I'm trying to decide whether I think Colorado is too rattled from that deal, not just because of Rantanen out, but I think you touched on it earlier. The fact that nobody knew was going to happen, you have to look at that trade and think to yourself, does my GM, my coach, my organization believe that we are still a Stanley Cup contender? Because it's a weird trade to make. And to not offer Rantanen, I understand this whole make more than McKinnon thing, but McKinnon's underpaid. Like, McKinnon's not underpaid if his contract's up next year. But the way the cap's going up, you cannot not pay players because they can't make more than McKinnon when the cap's going to go up 10, 15 million. So I think they made a little mistake there. If they can get back that winning ways, maybe they can jump Minnesota. So I'm going to stay Dallas 2, Winnipeg 1, Dallas 2. I am going to take Colorado over Minnesota. I know I never give Minnesota enough credit. They seem to do good every year right at this time. But I think the Kaprizov thing is going to be too much of a factor over the next even just 1 or 2 weeks. It's going to be enough to claw Colorado back ahead, and I don't think Minnesota will catch back up. So that's for me for the Central.
Okay. I'm gonna go Winnipeg for sure. Same reasons. You got they're just too strong a squad right now. They're scoring. They're doing everything right. I'm gonna leave Dallas in second as well, and I'm gonna leave Minnesota there. They keep winning. They're at 0 for differential. They lose to Ottawa. They beat Ottawa. They lose to these guys. They beat those guys. They just seem to kind of to play along. And right now they're 12 games over 500. If they continue on that path, they're going to end up with 40, 45 wins and, 25, 30 losses, something like that. And I think that'll be enough for them to stay in that third spot. I think Colorado is even going to kind of stumble a little bit here. I think they're going to really feel the difference. And, they came out of the gate a little bit slow, then they won. But after the trade, I just don't see them. I don't see them closing that gap, even though it's a couple points. I just think Minnesota will still win enough to stay ahead of them. So then moving to the Pacific, this is it. I'm going to knock on wood, but I'm going to go with the Oilers. I think they can roll to the end. I think they can continue to hold off Vegas, who will eventually here start winning again because that's what they do. I think Vegas will end up in second, and I actually hope they get a good first round matchup with the Kings because they need to do something different. I think the Kings, again, the Kings are my Minnesota Wild. I don't ever give them enough credit. I don't ever think they'll be there, but they just keep rolling along and ended up in that third spot anyway. I think they'll do that. I think those extra games are going to be the difference between them and Calgary, those 3 games each. I don't think Calgary and Vancouver are going to be able to do it. So I think Calgary will just float along in that 8th spot. And LA will hold on to number 3.
Yeah, I think I don't think there's much be different in my assessment either. I definitely have the Oilers taking it. I think they're the strongest team easily in that division.
The world. Say the world, Sims.
No, I'll go division.
Yeah.
Tops. Vegas, I don't think they're as strong as they were. Same kind of talk I talked about with Colorado. They're not the same team they were in their Stanley Cup run. And I don't think Vegas knows what to do without Mark Stone out, so you can bring in 5 people at the trade deadline. So without that, I don't know if they've got what it takes to go down the stretch.
It's going to be a different
all jokes
animal
aside,
for them, eh?
I agree with you on the Kings. I think those games at hand matter. I think the Kings will go, let's say, at least 50% on those games. That puts them 5 points ahead on the Flames at that point, even with just 2 out of 2, or sorry, 2 and 2 on those record. So I think that's enough to push them ahead. Calgary and both Vancouver, they're winning games, but they're winning games at like that clip of like 557, right? So let's say you're at 557. How do you claw back 5 to 6 points from a team that doesn't really play under 500 hockey? So I just don't think you can make that back up. So I'm going to go same thing. Edmonton, Vegas, LA, Pacific.
And then obviously for our wild card, I've got Colorado and Calgary, and then you had Minnesota because you put Colorado up into the Central Division, and so you got Minnesota and Calgary.
Actually, in that scenario, I think so. When I spoke earlier, I said I think Calgary has the better chance to make the playoffs. My pick is Vancouver.
Ooh.
So there's a big difference because yes, I think they have the easier road because they don't have the pressure and everything like that. But let's be honest, I know how my life goes. And Calgary finishing 9th is the worst case scenario that could possibly happen from this season. So I see them finishing 9th.
Well, always the optimist. So we do appreciate that for you. I'm gonna have them squeezing in there, and the good news is, if and when they do squeeze in there, as I predict, they'll have that 8th seed, but they will narrowly avoid Edmonton in the first round because I don't think that Edmonton's going to be able to catch Winnipeg for the conference title. It's possible, but like you said, even that, it's 7-point difference with the game in hand.
I'll tell you what, though, I would rather play Edmonton. Calgary cannot beat Winnipeg through all the years I've watched them. That is one team they absolutely struggle with. They get up for the Edmonton games at least.
Yeah.
The Winnipeg games, somehow we get smoked every single time.
Which is shocking because as we grew up, it was the exact opposite. Poor Winnipeg was in there with Calgary and Edmonton, and they got hammered every year. Didn't matter who they made the playoffs with, they just got beat up. So it's definitely different. And I think, it'd be really great to see. In reality, all jokes aside, I would love to see somebody falter a little bit and see Vancouver and Calgary and get 4 Canadian teams on this side. It would be amazing. But yeah, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the Canucks are shambles, and I think they've got all kinds of issues. And if Quinn Hughes is actually out and injured right now, then that's going to make a difference and all sorts of things.
The only way that can happen is I haven't really looked at the schedule, but let's say, because it's divisional, let's say Calgary and Vancouver each have 3 games against LA. Right? Yep. So if you have that and they both sweep, that knocks 12 points off LA. Pushing the other 2 6 in, they could bump LA down.
Oh, for sure.
And then take, like you said, 3rd place and a wild card. So if there's enough games, then it's possible, but we'll see. Yep. But anyways, so that's a good kind of roundup of what we think will be happening on the West Coast and how hopefully we see it happen for the playoffs, and it should be exciting.
A little bit easier out here. There isn't quite so many variables as there are out east. So we should be, a little bit better at this one. And hopefully we'll see some of these teams that were cheered for actually make it in there and do well. Obviously, Edmonton's in a good position and Calgary is just hanging on. So kind of standard fare for that. It's been a great season. I think we're seeing a lot of similar things, but, definitely some surprises. I think the Canucks on the outside is a surprise. The Avalanche down low is a surprise. And for a while there, Minnesota was great. But I think the Jets are really the big surprise of this year in the Western Conference. Just really, like you said, up and down. Every 2-3 years, they seem to have a big year where they go on a run and they just decide that this is the year they're not losing. So 14 losses on the season is pretty impressive at this point in February. So,
and with a team that almost looks the same. That's the weird part. It's never like you've brought in 6-7 new guys and shipped out. It seems the core's been the same and they just go up and down. But we'll see if they can hang on, though. Like every year, though, they haven't really gone far in the playoffs. So we'll see if this is their year. Maybe this is finally where they get over the hump and they move through. But
Well, they
So
lost in 5 to Colorado last year. Won the first game like 7-6 or 8-7, something like that. A huge scoring barn burner, and then lost 4 straight. So it's always tough, but it'll be fun once we get to the playoffs.
So this is where they're sitting now. So they're all going to get a break. Obviously, we got the Four Nations coming up, something we will start to delve into for all our viewers. Take a look at the tournament, the schedule, and maybe some even predictions of what we see going to happen there.
Definitely. We'll review that. We're also looking at a few changes, right? We've got Petrangelo's out. We've got some other guys possibly injured. We're going to do an update as close to the start of the tournament as we can to hopefully have any announcements or any changes kind of made by then. So we'll get together and try to do that and put that out for you guys so you can have an update on what's going on. And then we'll be covering between the games and kind of letting you know what it looks like, wins, losses, ties, whatever happens, and kind of go from there to see who's doing well and what people need to do to win and how people get to the championship game. So it's 3 games and then a championship. So that's it. It is, winner take all pretty much right out of the gate. So not a lot of practice time, not a lot of anything. So it's going to be fun and it's going to be exciting. It's been far too long, eh, Sims?
Yeah, we've been really missing some international at this level. Obviously, we get our World Juniors in each year, but not the best on best for the top pros. So it should be fun. Hopefully, they take it pretty seriously. I'm hoping they
pretty
take
sure
a bit of
everybody will
pride
be.
from it.
Yeah.
But it is smack dab right in the middle of a playoff run. But we'll see how it goes. But that was good. Looking forward to hear other people's predictions. Like Merrick said, this is definitely a side I think is a little more. We'll see a lot more people have kind of the same predictions as us. The East was kind of a lot of coin flips over there. But we want to hear to see if we're in the right spots, or do you guys see some more upsets coming, or maybe you just got some opinions on, like we had mentioned, whether the Winnipeg is a surprise to people or not, or were you someone who expected that?
Yeah, let us know. We always love to hear from you. So I want to thank you, Sips. Another great show. And obviously, we'll be back, like we said. We're coming up next with some Four Nations coverage after this. We'll do Four Nations preview and then some game coverages and all of that. I just want to thank everybody for listening. It's a lot of fun to do this for you guys. So you can find us at www.sportsbuds.com. That's sportsbudz.com. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple, Google, pretty much anywhere you can find your podcast. So if you found one of us, you can definitely find more. So it's been great, Sebs. Great show. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.